book you can find for less than $10 shipped. This definitely don't waste your money on. The first clan of the 13 clans, I'm going to start with the Camarilla and then list them alphabetically. The Bourgeois. They are originally the clan of philosophy and have degenerated into gangster of all varieties, from the different stereotypes they have: neo-Nazis, Latino gangs, Bloods and Crips, any sort of hot-headed rabble-rouser that you might think of. That's the typical bourgeois. There are a lot of older bourgeois that if you run into and use them in your game, a 500-year-old bourgeois that is still of that sort of leftist-leaning mindset and a philosophical mental cast that can really throw the players off. It is not a simpleton, a rabble-rouser one. It is a really philosophical individual. Each of the clans has a flaw, and their flaw basically has to do with losing their temper rather easily. They also often are amongst the anarchs, which are sort of a quasi-sect. They are not nearly as strong as some of the independents or the Camarilla, of course, or even the Sabbat, which I might cover in some slight detail. The clan disciplines. Each clan has 3 disciplines as well as a weakness. There's a celerity, which is super movement, tremendous speed. If you've seen any vampire movies or Kindred the Embraced or True Blood, then you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. When the vampires are zipping around the room, there's a good use of celerity in an interview with a vampire. They also have potence, which is tremendous strength, which is in all vampire stuff going back to Dracula. Then they have presence, which is a tremendous magnetism that is possessed by the individual. At high levels, they can call to you and send you beckoning. Presence is used by Dracula. You see in a scene he uses that ability to summon his lover. Next are the Gangrel, who are at the very, very end break away to become an independent clan, but over the entire course of the game they are part of the Camarilla. The Camarilla, I guess I'll also mention that very quickly, are sort of the ruling body, the government of vampires. They are the traditional ones. They have a strict enforcement of the Masquerade, which certain other sects don't enforce as much. However, there is a great deal of Masquerade enforcement from certain other of the smaller sects, but the Sabbat, at least allegedly, aren't really for it, which doesn't really make a lot of sense, because the Masquerade is basically the tool that the game uses to explain why vampires are in our world. World of Darkness takes place, it can take place in any setting. The default setting is Earth, is our Earth, our time, absolutely real, the same world you're living in, except you don't know that there's vampires and other creatures moving around there because they keep their business to themselves under the penalty of death by the elders, which is really makes the game fun, because anyone should be able to immerse themselves in a city. Who hasn't been to a large city? And that's pretty much where you have your vampires, although they don't have to be confined to there. But it's not as much suspension of disbelief as, say, playing a Dungeons & Dragons game where you have to think of an entirely alien world, or a game of a futuristic setting, or a setting out in space somewhere. So the next ones are the Gangrels, and they're also prone to frenzy like the Bourgeois, but they're not quite as easy. However, it's a far worse thing when they frenzy, because they begin to degenerate and devolve, taking on bestial characteristics. You basically select an animal, and it can be pretty much whatever you want. Maybe you want to have it, I think the classic really would be a wolf, which is the Gangrel clan symbol. But you could really make it anything, a spider, a bat, whatever sort of animal you like, and you gradually start taking on those characteristics, and they start lowering your social skills over long periods of time. They have the clan discipline of Fortitude, which is tremendous toughness, the ability to shrug bullets off, blow, and other sorts of blows as well. It makes them very hard to kill. They also have Protean, which allows them to see in the dark. They grow out long claws that they can do horrible damage with. It's called aggravated damage, which if you do it to a human, they will never recover that damage for the rest of their life. They will be crippled and destroyed and bear tremendous scars and marks. They also can allow them to just drop their body right into the earth to prevent themselves from, say, being burned if they are out too early in the morning. Vampires are, of course, very susceptible to sunlight. It will kill them almost immediately. It does damage every round, and everything around in this game is like 6 seconds or 3 seconds. So it does a tremendous amount of damage, although Fortitude can't help with that. Anything other than there are a few tiny ways to get around it, but your typical vampire game, your typical character gets caught out in the sunlight, he dies. Protean also allows you to assume the shapes typically of a wolf and a bat, although there are ways you can change that. And finally, to turn into mist, which is, of course, that goal goes back to Dracula. The Protean discipline is definitely covered very much by Bram Stoker. And their final discipline is animalism. They can communicate with animals. They can call animals, call and summon the swarms of rats. The movie Bram Stoker Dracula has a good scene with that. They can sort of manipulate also individuals to sort of trigger their beast with animalism as well. Next clan are the Malkavians. The Malkavians' clan disciplines changed over time. They came up with a rather cool discipline called Dementation, which was not in the original book. Malkavians originally had Dominate, Auspex, and Offuscate. Now, I'm going to talk about Dominate later when it is appropriate to a clan. They've replaced it with Dementation. They came up with an absolutely horrible story to explain why it had shifted between editions, when they should have just said, we've come up with a better discipline. Dementation appears both in the Dark Ages book, which is to say that's what old Malkavians had, and it originally appeared in the Player's Guide, the original softback Player's Guide to the Sabbat, where they presented the anti-tribute or anti-tribe Malkavians. The Dementation discipline is great. Malkavians, they are the clan of the moon. They are insane. The broken mirror is their symbol. All of them have derangements. Some of them have more than one. And unfortunately, many of them do not realize they have derangements. Unfortunately, a lot of people play Malkavians very poorly and have given them a bad reputation. They play them in a way that should be funny into their minds, and it comes off very poor and hokey. Malkavians are not funny. They are serial killers who drink people's blood and are out of their mind, insane. They are probably the creepiest and scariest of all the vampires, and really should be presented in that vein, not as light and fluffy. If you have silly players, Vampire really isn't a game for them, and Malkavian are definitely not a clan, which they have, unfortunately, a lot of people I've talked to, both in person and online, have a bad taste for Malkavians. Oh, well, Malkavians are silly, and then I recount stories of how Malkavians have been played by myself and people in my group, and they say, well, that's much more intense than what was seen. So, if you look at Malkavians, you really, in my opinion, should play them with intensity and with a way to get that insanity over, because that only does justice to what the writing of this clan is. I think they offer really great role-playing potential, but only really for advanced, a really advanced style of player. Handling insanity in a creepy, mature fashion is something that is definitely not for the basic style of role-play, I don't think. Now, their discipline, Dementation, I said they didn't have it, but it essentially forces their insanity onto you. You start having banner snatches around your eyes and start going crazy when they start using Dementation on you. It is absolutely wonderful. I've had it used on characters of mine. I've enjoyed the process of selling for that, of just having my mind melted by a Malkavian. It's really an interesting process for our creative game master, when they start using flipping the lights on and off and getting beside the player and whispering strange things to them and describing the things that are appearing around them. And of course, if your player goes with you and begins to immerse themselves into that suspended disbelief of following that this is actually what's happening, it really makes for a very interesting, entertaining scene. And I think Dementation is one of the most interesting of the disciplines. They also have Auspex, which is supernatural senses, reading auras, telepathy. It's a great discipline. A lot of people kind of push it to the side. It's probably maybe my favorite of all the vampire disciplines, because it's just absolutely wonderful. You can without it, it's very difficult to tell if someone is supernatural. With it, it's a piece of cake. And it's you can use it a lot. It can be used for psychometry as well. They also have obfuscate, which is hiding, being able to move while you hide, being completely. Basically, the way it works is if you're walking down the street and you've obfuscated yourself, people walk around you. They still see you. You're just not registering to their mind. They're looking away from you. It's almost a mental command power as opposed to a hide and shadow sort of thing. So bringing it across that way makes it very interesting. At higher levels, you can do this to other people. You can also change your appearance completely, like a D&D change person spell. So that's the Malkavians. They are, of course, members of the Camarilla. The Nosferatu are the next clan. Originally, their progenitor, Absimliar, the third generation, was the leader of the vampires, and he was cursed by Cain for attempting to lead the vampires in a revolt against him in the second generation. He was scarred with hideous ugliness. The vampires clearly taken their image and ideas from the classic vampire movie Nosferatu, which is, of course, sort of almost a theft of Dracula. They changed enough details to avoid a lawsuit with that film. But that's the image. Hideous, ugly vampires. Their flaw is to have zero appearance. They also have obfuscate. They also have potence, and they also have animalism. All disciplines that we have already covered. They are information brokers. They can be very creepy. And the fact that they do have potence is a clan discipline. Often people play them more as like little worms and rats, but they do have enforcers as well. And the fact that they're fourth generation, the Niktuku, who include such people as Baba Yaga from a Russian folklore, are hunting them, and they are hunting them back. The Keepers of the Black Stone actively engage in hunting fourth generation Nosferatu. There are some real badasses amongst them, and they have a tremendous network. They listen, and they are definitely not to be taken lightly. They typically live in sewers, but that doesn't have to be the case. And with a bit of thinking, the Nosferatu can really be a clan that pops. The next are the Toreador. Unfortunately, another clan a lot of people dislike. I love the Toreador. They're the beautiful people. They're the artists. I don't see what's not to like about them. I think part of the problem is a lot of people that aren't of the serious mindset, they kind of take Malkavians or Toreadors as their players' character, as far as from people I've talked to out there. I really haven't come across that very much myself. I played Toreador. I like the Toreador. Their clan disciplines are presence, which I've already covered, Auspex, which I've already covered, and Celerity, which I've already covered. And combining that with an artistic bent and mindset, they're quite interesting. Their flaw is they become mesmerized by enchanting beautiful things, and what's more beautiful than the dawn? So that can be quite a problem and flaw for Toreadors. Their clan symbol is the rose. The Tremere, this clan symbol looks like that. They are from a group. House Tremere was originally part of the Order of Hermes, mages from Mage of the Ascension, who, under their leader, Tremere, became vampires. They have a vampiric sort of magic, which is a very broken sort of magic. Not broken as in it's overpowered, broken as in it's a very diminished form of true magic because the avatar dies during the vampiric embrace. Now, thaumaturgy has a lot of paths, so it's basically a large group of separate disciplines that they get as one class discipline. And it can do a lot of interesting things. It would probably be a whole video really to discuss thaumaturgy. It's a number of books that they have created as well. They also have Auspex and Dominate, which I have not talked about before. Dominate is the ability to use mind control, the looking into someone's eyes and mesmerize them, to all the way up to reprogramming their brain or even jumping inside them, essentially, and using them almost as a puppet.